On this edition of Yakama Nation Career Pathways, we're going to be checking in with two biologists who are operating one of the newest programs at Yakama Nation Fisheries. Todd Newsom and Russ Byington work with one of the lesser-known fish here in the Yakama Basin, the bull trout. Bull trout require really cold, clean water, and for that reason, they're primarily found in our headwater streams. Bull trout are an apex predator. This means that they are the very top predator in the freshwater system. They primarily feed on other fish, including juvenile salmon and trout. With such a high protein diet, bull trout can grow really large, some of them upwards of 30 inches. Unfortunately, the number of bull trout in the Yakama Basin have been declining recently. Let's let Todd give you a little more background information on what the Yakama Nation is doing to help recover these really cool fish.
So working with the Yakama Nation, they have one goal, and that's to recover all stocks of fish that are currently in the Yakama Basin, or were in the Yakama Basin before they were extinct. We've brought back almost all the stocks of fish, and they're in some phase of recovery. Bull trout is kind of a new arena for Yakama Nation and the YKFP, but we have the knowledge with our rearing practices, our hatchery rearing, and our captive brood program, and we're learning more and more every year that we think we can really help these populations out. Bull trout are an indicator species. They indicate what kind of habitat is available, and if your population of bull trout is struggling, then you probably have some either poor water quality or some poor surrounding habitat quality. Here in the Yakama, most of our fish are above, most of our bull trout live above the storage dams or the reservoirs, and they're subject to attrition where the adults get washed out and never are able to get back above the dams. They're subject to fishing pressure in the lakes, and they're subject to pretty poor forestry practices back at the turn of the century. So all those things together are really causing our populations to decline throughout the basin.
Let's take a little bit deeper look into some of those challenges that Todd mentioned. The two bull trout streams the Yakama Nation is working in exist in the upper Yakama Basin. Each fall, as the water levels rise, adult bull trout travel back to their natal streams where they will pair up and find a mate. The bull trout will lay their eggs in a gravel nest that are buried deep enough to be protected, but also shallow enough and in some nice coarse gravel so that oxygen can flow through the gravel and provide air to the eggs. After spending a winter and part of the spring in their nest made of gravel, the fish will hatch from their eggs and emerge. These juvenile bull trout are really small, just a couple inches in length, and they grow really slowly for their first couple years of life. The biggest challenge for a bull trout is surviving its first few years of life. The river in which they were born is a hostile environment. They have to survive for 2 to 3 years in this small creek until they are able to migrate out to a larger lake. And for fish in these two streams in the upper Yakama Basin, the biggest challenge they face is that large parts of their stream dewaters or dries up every single summer. One of the populations in particular has it really bad. These bull trout have to spend the first 2 to 3 years of life in a stream that is only about 2 miles long. And each year, almost a mile of that goes completely dry. The main reason for all this dewatering is historic logging practices. The removal of large, old-growth trees that grew right along the banks destabilized the stream. This allowed the river to spread out, and the water started to seep down through the rocks. Combine this issue with the declining snowpack due to climate change, and you have a real problem. As the lower part of this stream quickly begins to dry up, fish look for refuge in the few remaining pools in the stream. As the water continues to recede, soon there can be hundreds of fish trapped in a single pool. With so many fish confined to such a small pool, it attracts the attention of predators. Gardener snakes and birds really take their toll on fish as they seek shelter in the slowly drying up pools. Local habitat biologists believe that they can address some of the dewatering issues in this creek. However, in the short term, immediate action is needed, and that's where Yakama Nation Fisheries comes in.
So here at the hatchery, we are captive rearing juvenile young of the year bull trout that we captured in their natal streams this last summer, there was a group of the agencies, 4 or 5 different groups, come together in the basin, part of the Yakama Integrated Plan, that are working to save the species and recover the species to harvestable levels in the Yakama Basin. And here, our portion, the Yakama Nation's portion, is we're artificially rearing these juveniles up to subadult size, which is about 120 millimeters to 160, and some even bigger than that, and put them back in their natal systems above the dams. And we call it a lifeboat strategy for now. We have 2 populations here at this facility. We have the Cachis Reservoir portion, and we have the Ketchulus Reservoir portion, Gold Creek. And they are genetically different, and so we keep them separate here at the hatchery, and we were going to release them back into their lakes that they came from.
Let's take a look at what this rescue operation looks like for these juvenile bull trout. Here, a group of biologists, technicians, and interns work together to help rescue fish from the stream as it dries up. To avoid being eaten by predators, juvenile bull trout really only come out during the night. For this reason, the rescue efforts really don't get going until it's pitch black. Once these fish are spotted, it takes a little bit of effort to try and get them to go into a net. You often have to remove rocks, poke the fish a little bit, and try to get them to position so you can scoop them up. Armed with little more than an aquarium net, some sticks, and some flashlights, the group can capture hundreds of these juvenile bull trout in a single night. The fish are all put into a bucket and provided an aerator to make sure they have plenty of oxygen, and then the Yakama Nation transports them back to the hatchery. The hatchery is located in Union Gap, and here the bull trout will be under the watchful eye of Russ and Todd, who will monitor their health over the next months.
Here we're trying to lifeboat them. They're an apex predator. They're at the top of the food chain in the aquatic world. They eat everything. Here we feed these guys rainbow trout fry. We also feed them little tiny salmon fry later in the year to get them trained up for their release. We currently have released 1 batch of fish back to their natal lakes last year. We released about 165 fish into the Cachis system, and we released about 75 into the Gold Creek Lake Ketchulus system. And we've had good survival on both populations, and it's exciting for the future.
Before the bull trout can be released, the Yakama Nation staff takes some final information from each one of the fish. They take a final weight, measurement, and then here they're taking a fin clip. Removing a little bit of fin from the fish doesn't harm it, and they can use this fin to get a DNA profile on it and actually confirm where this fish came from. They can also use this information to see how closely related this fish is to other ones when they capture them in the future. The final step is to put a PIT tag inside of each one of the fish. A PIT tag stands for Passive Integrated Transponder. Each one of these tags has a unique number on it, and it will allow biologists to track the movement of these fish and to see if they survived if they encounter them again in the future. Now, I know this looks like it might be harming the fish, but studies have shown that this really doesn't seem to have any negative impact on the fish, and the amount of data that we get from these tagged fish is incredibly important. These fish have about an hour to recover as they're transported back up to the original stream in which they came from. With a bit of luck, this fish will survive its time out in the lake, and in a few years return to the same stream in which we rescued it from just years ago. Biologists like Russ and Todd hope that this project helps these bull trout populations stay alive long enough so that we can address the habitat issues that have become such a problem. Once the habitat is improved, it is likely that these fish will be able to become self-sustaining populations once again. Now that we've explored the Yakama Nation Bull Trout Project, let's take a moment and ask a few more questions of Todd and Russ.
My name is Russ Byington. I'm a bull trout biologist for the Yakama Nation under the YKFP.
My name is Todd Newsom with the Yakama Nation Fisheries. I work for the YKFP, the Yakama Klickitat Fisheries Project. I am a fisheries research scientist. I'm in charge of doing the coho recovery in the Yakama Basin and the monitoring and evaluation of the salmon. I'm also working with the bull trout folks, and for the Yakama Nation, I do a lot of the bull trout work. We are funded, the bull trout portion of our work is funded by the Bureau of Reclamation in combination with Washington Department of Ecology and part of the Yakama integrated plan.
Started out going to school at Washington State University, got a degree there, and started working for the DFW, Washington State Department of Fish and Wildlife, and moved on from there to the private sector, and recently in 2019 started with the Yakama Nation.
I went to Washington State University in 1992, right out of college. I spent 4 years there, and I got a natural resource science management degree. And then from there, I got a job with the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife in the Hanford Reach doing Hanford Stranding Project, where I was rescuing young of the year fall Chinook salmon. And I did a lot of creeling, carcass surveys for Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, and just kind of kept after it year after year. I worked at the dams doing smolt bypass work, where we barged the smolts. My life almost took a couple turns. I had a final interview with Ducks Unlimited, almost became a Ducks Unlimited biologist. I got to the final cut, and it was between me and another person. So I stayed with fisheries because I didn't get the job, and I stayed in fisheries, and I've been here for 21 years now for the Yakama Nation, and I've loved every minute of it. It's the best job in the world. I don't think of it as a job, it's more of a passion.
What I like about my job is the freedom to be out in the woods all the time, and the opportunity to help out an endangered species or threatened species, or both, depending on the day, and try and get these bull trout back and recovered.
What I love about my job is to try and fix the things that have caused the declines in the salmon and the overall aquatic ecosystems in the Yakama Basin.
Main advice I'd say is stick with it and don't be afraid to move around. Oftentimes that's more rewarding than stressful or anything like that, even though it sounds like it when you're young, but you gain a lot more experience and life experience too.
So if I was in high school right now and I could give advice to high school age kids how to get a job in fisheries, I would say go to finish high school and either get an AA degree or go to get an AA degree and then go to a 4-year school and get some sort of biological degree, ecologist degree, habitat degree, or some sort, and work your way up doing summer programs, summer jobs, and get as much experience as possible. Even if they don't pay. I mean, one of my very first jobs, I was getting $12 a day per diem, and so even if they don't pay anything, the experience is what you need. And all those experiences put down on a resume, you have over 4, 5, 6 years, when you go to get a permanent real job, it means a lot to the employer that the individual has all that experience. So I guess if I could go back to when I was the Todd of 19-year-old Todd, I would go get as much experience as possible in as many different agencies as possible, and then I have more to give to the agency that I work for eventually. And I feel like all the experience I had when I was younger has really made my work here a lot easier because of the knowledge that I gained when I was younger.
That concludes this edition of Yakama Nation Career Pathways. A special thanks to Russ and Todd for showing us the bull trout program. For more information on projects like these, check out the Yakama Nation Fisheries or YKFP websites. This video was created by Mid-Columbia Fisheries Enhancement Group with funding from NOAA's BWET program and from the Yakama Basin Integrated Plan.